It's now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. If you'd like to stand out from the crowd, bring in business faster, and have bigger and better conversations with your clients, you're in the right place. Our presenter, Deirdre Van Nest, is a top-rated international keynoter and creator of the Crazy Good Talks Blueprint and Emotionally Engaging Advisor. Two communication systems that have taught thousands of financial professionals how to cut through the noise, bring in business faster, and impact more lives. Her number one goal for being here today is to empower you to be more captivating and connect more deeply when you communicate both virtually and in person. So please welcome Deirdre.
Thank you, John. If you want to be the name on everyone's lips when they ask, know a good financial advisor, you have to be seen as more than just a numbers person. People need to see you as a person and not just someone who's trying to win their business. I coach some of the most successful advisors and leaders in this industry, and they will tell you that who you are, how you show up, what you stand for, and why you care, and the degree to which you're willing to share that side of yourself with your clients, your prospects, and your teams will affect your success in this industry more than anything else you do. Now, I'm not saying that work ethic, skills, and a solid marketing plan aren't important ingredients for a successful practice. But with today's consumer, particularly in this environment, it's not enough. If you try to compete on those elements, you will lose. You will be seen as a commodity. Now, I think you'd agree that over the past few months, things have changed massively in the economic landscape, and none of us really knows what the new normal is going to look like yet. But I've noticed something really interesting, and maybe you have too. If COVID-19 has shown us anything, it's that we value human connection. What does that mean for you as a financial advisor? It means, and this is great news, you are facing a massive opportunity right now. You see, your potential clients and your current clients are desperately looking for reassurance, for leadership from someone they can trust. They want someone they can feel connected to, yes, on a business level, but also on a personal level. Someone who shows that they understand their situation as a fellow parent, business owner, and human being. Your clients know they need professional help with their finances now more than ever. And with all the uncertainty and change, I believe you are the unsung heroes of this crisis, both now and moving forward, because your care and your guidance will give your clients the stability and assurance that they need. So this is no time to shrink back from your calling. It's no time to shrink back from your calling as an advisor, and no time to shrink back from your calling as a leader. What if I were to tell you that what's likely missing from your current business plan is not more hustle or industry knowledge, it's more heart, more you? And what if I were to tell you that the magic bullet, you know, that edge, that magic marketing bullet that you've been searching for, is for you to stop proving yourself and instead start being yourself? Would you think that I was absolutely crazy? Well, let me give you an example of what happens to advisors when they stop trying to prove themselves and they actually start being themselves. Susan is a client of mine from Ohio. She's in her mid-50s, tall, dark hair, super friendly. And we were talking about a year and a half ago, and she said, Deirdre, my firm has this event we have put on for 12 years. And it's a great event. It's a great visibility event. It's a great kind of feel-good event. It's where we bring clients and prospects and friends together to pack meals for orphans overseas. There's just one problem. In the 12 years that we've hosted this event, we have never brought in business directly as a result of the event. As you can imagine, she said, this is super frustrating, and I really want this year to be different. Fast forward a few months later, Susan and I meet up at one of her company conferences, and she said, Deirdre, guess what? Remember that event I told you about? Well, we had it, And before it was over, I had 5 people come up to me and say, can we meet? 3 have since become clients. So how did this happen? How did Susan end the 12-year client drought from this event? Do you want to know? I'm going to tell you. So what Susan did is when she introduced herself to the people at the event, she was what I call an emotionally engaging advisor. Emotionally engaging advisors master 2 critical skill sets. The first is they learn how to become what I call a crazy good storyteller. And the second is they learn how to stop giving people information, and instead they learn how to speak and write in benefits and transformation. They learn how to talk so when people envision working with them, they know the benefit it's going to bring to their life. So in Susan's case, in this example, she used the first skill set. So let me kind of map out what she did so that you can replicate this for yourself. At past events, when the advisors would stand up and introduce themselves to the group, they would do the typical advisor introduction. Hi, I'm Deirdre Van Nest. I'm a financial advisor, yada, 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 yada. You've heard it. You've probably said it, right? Boring, doesn't stand out from the crowd. But Susan instead told a very specific kind of personal story and followed a specific process to craft and deliver this story. And because of that, she was the only advisor in 12 years of hosting this event who connected emotionally with the group, and the only advisor to win their business. Now, I'm here today and I speak in this industry because I want you to make the same impact Susan made when you're speaking, whether you're speaking one-on-one, whether you're speaking to groups, whether it's online or virtual. And I'm so committed to that I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to help every advisor stand out, make emotional connections, and never, ever be viewed as a commodity. So let's talk about what you're going to learn in this webinar. First, we're going to do a quick activity, and then I'm going to share with you why I care so much, why I'm committed to your success as an advisor and a leader in this industry. From there, you're going to discover the 3 story types that every advisor should be telling to cast a vision to prospects, clients, COIs, the teams you lead, really wherever you're communicating, about why they'd want to work with you and why they should follow your advice. After that, you're going to discover which of these 3 storytelling types is like pouring lighter fluid on all your conversations, presentations, and marketing activities, and why, if you're not sharing this particular type of story, you are literally stepping over opportunities for new business and deeper relationships every single day. And this is true whether you're newer in the business or you're a top producing seasoned industry vet or you're a highly accomplished leader in the industry. And then finally, since we only have a limited amount of time together today, if you want more than we have time to cover, before we wrap up, I'll spend just a couple of minutes sharing a training program I created for advisors and leaders like you to warp speed your results in this area. So first, we're going to do a quick activity. What I'd like you to do is grab a piece of paper, or you can do this on your computer, your phone, whatever works for you, and do what this piece of paper says. So write the word before at the top of your piece of paper, and then underneath that, write the words like, connect, and trust. Okay, so just model this piece of paper. And then what I want you to do, and no one's going to see this but you, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being the worst and 10 being the best, I want you to rate how you feel about me right now. So how much do you like me right now? How connected do you feel to me? And how much do you trust me? And please go ahead and do this, because we're gonna come back to this twice. We're gonna do a very important kind of exercise and demonstration with this. So I do want you to rate me. And while you're doing that, I'm gonna go to full screen to share my story with you. Okay, so it was May 24th, 1980. It was a beautiful spring night in Chappaqua, New York. It was one of those nights where you just felt really good to be alive. You know those nights where kids are outside playing ball or tag, and you can hear their laughter from your open windows. A young couple, Ray and Karen Sanseverino, were getting all gussied up to go on a date in Manhattan. And while they were getting ready, Karen turned to Ray and said, honey, you know I've loved being home with the girls the last 10 years, but I'm ready to get back to work, and I want to talk with you about my plans on the car ride down. Ray turned to Karen and said, really? All right, that'd be interesting. So at about 7 o'clock that night, with Karen behind the wheel, they take off in their pride and joy, a 1980 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme. And as they're driving out of the neighborhood, they see their oldest daughter. She was one of the kids outside playing tag. So their daughter comes rushing over the car to say goodbye. She gives Karen a kiss goodbye and says, bye, mommy, rushes over to Ray, gives him a kiss, bye, daddy, and then rushes over to Karen for one last kiss. Bye, mommy, I love you. Karen turns to their daughter and says, bye, sweetie, be good for the sitter. We'll see you in the morning. And on their way they went. About 4 minutes later, Karen pulls the car up to a red light at an intersection of a 4-lane highway. She turns off the radio, turns to Ray and says, I want to talk with you about what I want to do for the rest of my life. At this point, the light turns green. Karen pulls the car in the intersection, and they are immediately T-boned by another car running the red at 90 miles an hour. Karen was killed. She was 32 years old. Now, Ray, on the other hand, upon impact, flew 60 feet in the air through the passenger side windshield. In fact, he was so far from the rescue scene that the rescue workers didn't even know he was in the accident. It wasn't until one of them eventually said, what's that pile of clothes doing on the other side of the highway, that they found him. That pile of clothes was Ray's broken body. But thankfully, due to divine intervention and heroic medical efforts, Ray lived. He was out of work for many months, but eventually he was able to get back to work and take care of his girls. Now, right about now, you're wondering two things. Deirdre, how do you know this story? And why are you sharing it with me? What does it have to do with me? So I know this story because Karen was my mom. Ray is my dad. And I was their oldest daughter. And as you can imagine, or maybe you've experienced too, losing my mom at that age has had a profound impact on my life. But here are the two ways that motivate me and help me be on a mission to help you. The first is my family did not suffer financially from the loss of my mom or my dad being out of work. My family was able to withstand the unlikely and unthinkable happening to us. But I know that is not the case for many, many people. I can't even imagine heaping financial devastation onto our already broken family. I don't know how people get through it with that also. The second is, over the years, as you can imagine, losing my mom in a snap, I've learned to be obsessive about my own financial planning. And let me give you an example. When I got pregnant with our first child, after I wondered the first question that everybody asks, right? Is this a boy or a girl? My thoughts weren't about the names and the nursery and the cute clothes and all that. My next thought went something like this. Pregnant. Okay. I got to get life insurance. I got to get it now. I got to protect my baby. So before we knew if my daughter Annika was a boy or a girl, I had dragged my husband, Peter, sat down with a financial planner and started the planning process. And do you know what I later learned as I started talking to my friends about this? That's not normal. Most people, when they find out they're pregnant, do not start thinking about getting life insurance and financial planning, right? Those people need your help. What that means is that most people in and around your communities are just one tragedy away from total financial devastation. And these are people with assets to protect and assets to invest. They need your help. They need you to protect their babies. And I'm very clear that my calling in life is not to do your job. I'm not called to be a financial professional. My calling is to be behind the scenes, helping you be the most compelling, persuasive, engaging, emotionally connecting communicator you can possibly be. Because when you are that type of communicator, you can inspire all of those people who would rather put off plans and their decisions to someday to make the right decisions for their family today. And so it's through that lens that I deliver this webinar to you, and it's through that lens that I do all of my work in this industry. So with that, let's go back to the slides. Let me just go back to the slides here. And I'd like you to re-rate me. So where you wrote down before, across from that, write the word after. Okay, write the word after. And then do the 0 to 10 again. How do you feel about me now? How do you like me now? How connected do you feel to me? And how much do you trust me? So I'm going to just give you about 5 seconds to do that. And then we'll jump back in, and I'm just reading some of your comments here. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Interesting. So Judy said the second time hearing this incredible story is more moving than the first. Powerful. So we should chat about that when I open up for questions. And thank you, Cheryl, for your comments. So thank you for listening to my story. Obviously, it's near and dear to my heart, and it's not easy to tell every day, but I do it because I really want to help you. Okay, so we're going to get back to this exercise in a moment, but let's jump into the strategy of business storytelling. So let me ask you this question. Have you ever presented an incredible plan or a solution to a client? One that you know they will say yes to, right? Only to have them say no, or I'll think about it. That's super frustrating, right? Why did this happen? Why didn't they see what you saw? So I want you to go ahead and type that in the chat. Why didn't they see what you saw? And John, if you don't mind just reading me a couple of the answers.
One says, because I didn't, let's see, it's moving so fast. There's so many coming in. Don't feel it. I didn't inspire them. No trust.
Yeah.
They couldn't see the vision, emotion.
Yes.
Their own version of reality.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, you nailed it. You nailed it. That's great. They didn't see it because decision making, and you know this, but it's easy to forget this, right? I have to remember this too. Decision making is not logical. Most people make decisions based on emotion, and then they back up that decision with logic. But it's been our practice in this industry to lead with logic. And we have to be talking to the emotional side of the brain and the logical side of the brain. If you want a yes, you have to appeal to that emotional side of the brain, which means you have to balance your facts and figures with language that paints a picture and gets your prospects. And please, if you hear me say nothing else in this entire webinar, this might be the most important thing you hear me say, is you have to get your clients to feel what you are saying. Okay, when you're communicating, this goes for everybody, when you're communicating, no matter where you're communicating, your job as a communicator is not so much to make sure your clients get it. Yeah, we want them to get it, and I want you to get what I'm saying. But even more than that, you want them to feel what you're saying. And as an advisor, where you're facing a lot of competition and everyone can look the same, your differentiator is how you communicate. Your differentiator is being able to get people to feel what they're saying and to feel what they will experience when they say yes to you. And here's the thing to keep in mind. In today's marketplace, consumers are not judging you. And when I say judging, I mean making decisions about whether or not they're going to work with you, whether they want to move forward or take your advice about a particular product or service or plan. They're judging you not just on what you're saying, but they're judging you on how you talk about what you're saying, right? So how you talk about what you know, many times is even more important than what you know. And this is an important thing to keep in mind, and a shift in this industry that I've started to see happen over the last couple of years, and it's gaining more steam, and we need to continue on this path so that we're speaking in the way that really reaches our consumers' heads and their hearts. Now, one of the most effective ways to talk about what you know in a way that emotionally engages people, right? Like you heard with Susan earlier, and the 3 clients she brought in immediately, is to tell stories. And if you're like many of the advisors that I work with or speak to, you might be thinking, okay, yeah, Deirdre, I get it. I know I need to tell stories, but you're asking the question, what kind of story should I tell? Okay, so these are the 3 types of business stories you eventually want in your toolkit. The first is what I call your why story. Your why story is a story about why you do what you do and why you care about the person or persons you're talking to. Okay. The next type of story is what I call a desire story. And a desire story is a story about a client who got great results working with you. Or maybe a client or someone who's not a client who didn't do what you're telling your client to do. And what happened to that person. The point of the desire story is to create a hunger and a desire inside of your listener for getting the same results or avoiding the same problems that the characters in your story have. And then the third type of story are stories, and this is probably the one you're most familiar with, are stories or analogies to make a point. So this is the type of story or analogy you would use when you want to make something, you have a complex topic and you want to make that simpler, or you have something that you really want to punctuate. You want to make sure they feel what you're saying and you want them to remember what you're saying long after you're gone. So let's take a moment, and I want you to tell me, type in the chat, which story have I told already in this webinar that would be categorized as a why story? Which story did I tell you that would be categorized as a why story? And John, if you could just read me maybe 2 or 3 answers, that'd be awesome.
Okay. Your mother's death, your family story,
Yeah.
family tragedy.
Thank you. So that story is my why story. It's why I'm so passionate about helping the financial services industry be able to reach more people. Okay. Now let's go to the desire story. Which story did I share that is a desire story? Which story did I share that made you thinking, oh, I want that to happen to me? Go ahead and put that in the chat. This one a little harder. We getting anything?
Becoming a mother, to protect your child, being pregnant.
So that's still part of the why story. So that was all part of why I care about helping you. So the desire story is the story I told you about Susan, the financial advisor from Ohio, where 12 years of running the same event over and over again, they never brought in a client. And because she added a story to the beginning of her introduction, she brought in 3 new clients right away. That's a desire story because I know that's something you want to have happen for you when you communicate and speak with prospects and clients. Okay. And then the third story type, I haven't used one of these yet, but I will be making an analogy here shortly. So I'll point that out when I get there. Now, these 3 story types should be woven throughout all of your verbal and written communication and marketing materials. And in the interest of time, we can't get into all 3 story types. So I want to ask you, which story type do you think is foundational to your business? Like, this is the story. Okay, I'm about to go into an analogy here. Okay, so listen for the analogy. This is the one you start with because, and here's the analogy, this story type is like adding lighter fluid to all of your presentations, conversations, and marketing activities. This story type increases trust, connection, and likability in 4 minutes or less. Which story type is it? Is it the why story, the desire story, or the stories or analogies to make a point?
Almost unanimous wise.
That's right. You got it. Smart group. It is the why story. The why story is the first story to start crafting and telling. And you can add in the others over time. This story should literally be the cornerstone of your marketing plan. You should be telling your why story to groups, when you're meeting with prospects and clients one-to-one, in videos. I've got a lot of my advisor clients telling these stories in videos, and in your online marketing copy. And now, because you're connecting in a virtual world, this storytelling skill is no longer a soft skill. It really never was a soft skill that's simply nice to have, but I think people are realizing even stronger now how important this is, that this is a critical business development tool, because it's a different deal when you're connecting with people over Zoom and things like that. Your why story will allow you to start connecting with your ideal prospects like never before, in a way that engages people, no matter what the economy is doing, no matter if you're in person or online. You and I both know it's super hard to gain trust in person, but it's even harder to gain it over a platform like Zoom with someone you've never met. Your why story, when you add this to your meetings with prospects, your why story will quickly enable you to gain trust, connection, and likability. So let's talk about why this is. Why is this skill so powerful? Well, I'm not going to tell you, you're actually going to tell me. So this is what I'd like you to do. I want you to go to where you rated me, where you did that before and after. And I'd like you to type in the chat if my scores went up after hearing my why story. So if they went up, just start typing yeses. And John, you can let me know if we have a slew and a flow of yeses.
We've got an overflow of yeses.
Yes, we've got an overflow of yeses. What I'd like to know is, why did it go up? So type in why, and John, if you could give me maybe a couple of different reasons why. I know I'm working you hard here, John. Thank you. You're doing a great job. If you can give me a couple of different reasons why my score went up.
It was emotionally. You were emotionally engaged, experienced, relatable. Personalized, authenticity.
Yeah.
Painted a picture that was reliable.
Yeah.
Relatable.
Yeah, and so let me tell you what happens. And if you've seen me do this live, you've seen me do this before. But when I do this live, when I do this exercise with a live audience, I actually ask them to stand. So I'll do the same moment. Instead of typing in the chat, I'll say, okay, if my scores went up after my why story, I'd like you to stand. And every time I do it, and I've been doing this all around the country for the past, 2.5, 3 years, 99% of the audience stands. That's really powerful. That's really powerful. And the great thing is the same will happen for you. When you share the right why story, you will immediately garner that same level of trust and connection and likability that I just garnered with you, because you're showing yourself as a real live human being. You're showing an appropriate amount of vulnerability, and that's important. It has to be appropriate to the audience and to the subject matter, okay? And you're showing them that you care about them and you're just like them. So I want you to think about this for a moment. I want you to think about the fact, if you had this skill set, if you developed this skill set and you had a couple of why stories for different situations and different groups, and you were able to quickly zone in on that trust, connection, and likability, what that could do for your practice, how that could make your business explode, and the bigger impact you could have on people's lives. And if you think about a score, like, so what? Why does a score going up matter? Well, why the score going up matters is because when your score goes up, your business goes up. And I saw this in my own business. I started sharing my why story in 2017. And when I added my why story, my incoming requests for speaking and coaching increased, and my speaking fees tripled. And when this started happening, I started wondering, oh my gosh, is this a fluke? Like, is this only for me because I'm a speaker and a consultant? Could this happen for my advisors and wholesaler clients also? And yes, I started teaching my private wholesaler and advisor clients and my leaders how to do this, and they started having the same results. So Susan, the advisor that I opened up this webinar with, she spoke for 5 minutes and she brought in 3 new clients just from a 3-minute story. The story was 3 minutes of her 5 minutes. That's amazing. There's no other skill that will allow you to do that. Imagine what would happen for you if you consistently did that. Let me share 2 more examples. One of my clients, Jimmy, he's a top producing advisor. He's got over 200 million in AUM. We had a conversation recently. He said, Deirdre, last year, 2019, I increased my AUM by 29% because of my new speaking and storytelling skills. Another client, Travis, I think he's got one of the hardest jobs in this whole industry. He is a wholesaler for disability protection. And he speaks to advisors like you day in and day out. And he used to have a heck of a time getting you to sit down and meet with him. A couple of years ago, we added his why story. He has the most powerful why story. He had never shared it with anyone. We added his why story to the beginning of his presentations. Do you know what happens now? 85% on average of the advisors he speaks to sign up for a strategy session with him after he delivers a presentation. Completely has changed his business. Changed those advisors' businesses too when it comes to disability income protection, and they're impacting more lives in a positive way. So this will absolutely happen for you when you learn this skill set and start to use this, because these are not isolated examples. I see this across the board all the time. So right about now, if you're like most audiences I speak to, you're thinking, okay, Deirdre, this is great. I get it, but I don't have a sad story to share, right? So if that's you, I totally got you. Don't worry. Your story does not have to be sad. Sorry, let me go back. I advanced too quickly. Your story doesn't have to be sad to make an impact. So let me tell you about one of my clients, Mark. Mark is a top producing advisor out of the Pacific Northwest. He does not have a sad story. He has what I call a catalyst story. And you might have a catalyst story. A catalyst story is when something in your life that was either good or maybe even neutral was the catalyst for you getting into this business. So in Mark's example, he tells a really great story about how he grew up working in his dad's office, and how when he got to the age where he was deciding what he wanted to do with the rest of his life, he thought, you know what, I want to be like Dad. I want to make an impact on people's lives like my dad did. So I became a financial advisor. And his story is about, 2 minutes long. It's got some great imagery, some great visuals, some great feel in it. And it immediately garners trust and connection and likability. Your story also, maybe you're someone you're like, Deirdre, I kind of just fell into this industry. I just like numbers, I don't really have like something emotional. Well, I'm guessing that might be true. And this is a great industry if you want to chart your own course, you want to, own your time and own your income, but it's not the easiest industry in the world, right? There are tough days. And so what I'm guessing is you stay in this industry also because of the impact you're making on people's lives and the difference you're making. And so the story doesn't have to have happened directly to you. The story can be about a client or clients you've helped, or maybe people who didn't accept help and what happened and how you never want that to happen to anybody else. So let me give you an example. And this example is one of the most powerful why stories I have personally ever helped someone develop and have ever heard. So this is an advisor called Frank, named Frank. And he tells a story and he says, when I started out in this industry 30 years ago, I absolutely hated every second of it, like literally hated every second of it. And I stayed in it, quite frankly, because it was the only thing I hadn't failed at. For some reason, I was actually good at it, but I hated it. But all of that changed one day when I went to visit my client's Big Jim and his wife. I'm going to call his wife Ethel. and his wife Ethel. So he talks about going to their house, and he's got some great visual imagery in there. And then he brings us to the one moment, this one pivotal moment in the story. He said, so Big Jim was dying. We knew this was going to be his last meeting alive, and we were getting his affairs in order. And as I was leaving, Big Jim called me over and said, Frank, come here. And Big Jim's on oxygen, and he's sitting back on his chair, and Frank says, and I'm standing there, and he's trying to like get himself up to the front of the chair, and it felt like that minute was like an hour. And he pulled me in real close. Frank, come here. And he put his hand on my hand, and he said, Frank, take care of my lady. And Frank said, I left his house. I pulled my car down the street, and I wept. And that moment changed my life. I went from being in a business that I hated to having a mission. And my mission from that point forward has been to protect Big Jim's lady and all the other ladies who need my help. And to this day, I'm still protecting Big Jim's lady. She's still a client. And I specialize in helping widows. So I hope you can see how powerful, and I didn't tell the story the way he tells it. I kind of gave you a little snippet, but I hope you can see how powerful it is. That didn't happen directly to him, right? It wasn't a life event that happened to him, but a moment with a client impacted his heart so deeply that this became a motivating factor for the work that he does. And so your story doesn't have to have happened directly to you. Your story can be about the clients you serve day in and day out. So with that, I just gave you a lot of content, and I want to see what questions you have. So we actually have about 7 minutes for questions. So go over to the Q&A function, please, because that's going to be a lot easier for John and I to keep track of. And I'm actually going to stop my share. I'm going to go on full screen for the questions. So wait, let me just close Q&A. Let me stop my share, come on full screen. And then what questions do you have about anything that I have said so far? So John, I think I've got this. I'll let you know if I need you to jump in. So the first one I have is, okay, great question. I apologize. I'm not sure how to say this name. It's Haiqing. And it's, how about new agents who don't have a client story and don't have their own story? Yeah, so that's really great. So first of all, I do want to challenge you. I have so many clients who don't think they have their own story because they think it has to be this big, massive moment. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that. So I want to challenge you to look for areas in your life where it has led you to this moment. And it doesn't even have to be about, oh, this is why I love working with numbers. It could be, this is why I like helping people. And I can think of no better way to help people than with their financial, their finances, because we know finances is such a big stressor for people. So I would actually come up with a story about why you like to help people in general. And then as you develop and get deeper into your career, you will have more specific stories about why financial planning. You also, if you're working with other, seasoned vets, or you're on a team, you can also hear about their stories. And you can't say it's your story, but you can say, like our firm has a client and this happened to them, and that really impacted me. So those are 2 ways, if you're newer, you can get around that. Anonymous said, how do you know if your story is powerful? Yeah, you know it by trying it out. You know it by sharing it with people. So I would just, craft the story that resonates with you. Start sharing it with friends and family. See how they react. Then you can start sharing it with clients, then with prospects, and then you can take it to the stage if you speak. Maria says, how do you use your story when you first meet someone? Yeah, that's great, Maria. So here's a couple of ways you can do this. And I don't want to be overly prescriptive because I want you to be natural. Okay. But what I recommend many of my advisors do is, let's say you're meeting with a prospect for the first time, right? And let's say now it's over Zoom. You get on and they get on, and you do like a minute or two of chit chat. And then you say something like, you know, I'm really excited to learn what made you want to invest the time to have this meeting with me today. I'm really excited to learn about your goals and your dreams. And before we jump in, you might be wondering, like, who I am. I'm going to be asking you some personal questions. I know you're going to be sharing some things with me. And so I'm thinking I want to go first and let you know who I am and why I care about you. One, so that you feel comfortable sharing more about you. But two, if I'm going to be taking financial advice from someone, I kind of want to know what makes them tick. And then you can share your why story. Another thing you can do is you can just look for natural parts in the discussion where you can say something like, you know, in a moment, like let's say someone says to you, and I've done this and I've won business from doing this. I was actually, let me give you a little example. I was actually on a call with a couple of leaders from a massive insurance company, and they were talking about bringing me in for some consulting and speaking work. And I was referred to them. So I didn't have any previous connection with these leaders. And these two women, now we're on the phone, so we can't even see each other. And one of the leaders says to me, it's two women, says, so Deirdre, can you tell us what you can do for us? And I said, I'd love to tell you what I can do for you, but first, may I share why I do what I do? Because I actually think that's a little more important than what I do, and it'll give you some context. And I shared the story that you just heard. I did it instead of 4 minutes, I did it in about a minute. I just kind of bottom lined it and summed it up. What do you think the reaction was after I got done sharing the story? The entire just tenor of the conversation changed. We went from vendor and hiring person to more humans. And I'm happy to say I got the business, and I'm doing a lot of work with this company. So whenever someone says, what do you do? And it's an appropriate thing, especially if they're interviewing you for the job, I would say, love to share that. But first, may I share why I do what I do? Okay, someone says, how long do you want your why story to be? It's gonna, you know, anywhere from probably 60 seconds up to 4 minutes. 4 minutes is more in this style when you're doing a presentation. 60 seconds is gonna be in that kind of interview style. But if it's up to 4 minutes, it better be good, and it better be carefully planned out and crafted, word for word, edited it so that you're not rambling. This is one of the things a lot of advisors make mistakes. They ramble, they don't make a clear point, they insert details that are not necessary or distracting. You got to make sure this thing is tight so you can hold people's attention. Lauren asks, this is a great question, do you have a few stories to targeted audiences? Absolutely, Lauren. So you might have one story that covers overall financial planning. Then you might have a story, let's say you're a specialist in life insurance. You might have a story that's just on life insurance itself. Now, let's say one of your specialties is women going through divorce, right? I have a client, Michelle, that's her specialty. She has an overarching financial planning story that she can use for every audience. And then she's got a specific financial planning story for women going through divorce. So as an example, when I speak with financial advisors or leaders in this industry, I share the story you just heard. When I speak to other industries, just people in general, I have an overarching story for why I want everybody in the world, I know that sounds lofty, to be a crazy good communicator. Let's see. I'm just trying to see if we've got about 2 more minutes. Okay, Varsha asks, where on my website would be a good idea to share my story? I love this. So on your website and on your LinkedIn profile, you want your story on your LinkedIn profile to be on your About You page. You know where everybody in the industry lists all their credentials? Please stop. Please change that. That should be your story. Go to my LinkedIn profile. Please invite me to connect with you and check out my About Me page. You will see a story there. It's not this story. You will see another version of a why story that I use. That's where yours should be. And on the About You page of your website, that's also where your story should be. If you go to my website, crazygoodtalks.com, you will see stories there. Those are perfect places. And then let me just see if I can pick one more. Yeah, Mark Miller said, I think picking the right kind of story for the right client is lighter fluid. Absolutely. It absolutely is. if you ever hear like TMI, right? Where someone's telling you a story and you're like, I don't know why you're telling me this. This feels a little awkward. Or they're just rambling and you're like, I don't know what this has to do with me. You're straight on, Mark, there, that the reason why it's TMI or they're wondering what this has to do with them is because the story and the audience don't line up. So they have to be totally connected. And then Matthew, you have a great question to segue into our closing here. Matthew asks, when developing your why story, do you have an outline to follow that we could walk through? So, John, I'm just going to jump into answering that question. Okay, so let me go back on screen share here. I promised you in the beginning that I would talk about the virtual training that I created and just released for you. There's a fine line when you're out on a Friday night doing, talking with your friends. You can ramble. Your stories don't have to be clearly connected. They don't even have to really have a point because your friends will tell you to wrap it up. But in business, that can't happen, right? Your stories have to be tight. You have to know where to find them, what to tell, and how to craft them. And the paradox of business storytelling is you have to, I'm gonna go to this slide. You have to tell your story so it gets people to feel, but you have to do it in the fewest words possible, right? So there's a science to this. This is great news that it's a science, because even if you're someone who naturally engages people well, if you haven't trained and you haven't dove into the science of this, you haven't even scratched the potential of what's possible for you. And if you're someone who you feel like, I'm not so good at this, this is really tough for me, you can absolutely learn how to be crazy good at this. This is something I help advisors with day in and day out. So this is the training program that I mentioned earlier. It's called the Emotionally Engaging Advisor. And this is a program. I'm going to show you the purpose of the program. The purpose of the program is to teach you how to find, craft, and deliver stories that will enable you to build trust, connection, and likability in 4 minutes or less. It'll teach you exactly how to do what you saw me do with you today. It'll also teach you how to use language that casts a vision for why people should work with you and why they should follow your advice. So you will use this language verbally, online, and in emails. Learning how to speak in transformational language will not only help you bring in new business, but it will increase client compliance. So if you need a client to sign a form, when you use transformational language in the email you send them, they're going to comply right away versus you having to chase them down for weeks. Or if you have a client who's balking at a life insurance premium, with transformational language, they'll be happy they bought the policy. Now, because of COVID-19, I want to make this training accessible to every advisor. So I just massively reduced the price of the program, and you can get started for as little as a $199 a month. So to learn more about the program, go to crazygoodtalks.com/EEA. It stands for Emotionally Engaging Advisor. And everything you need to make a decision on whether or not it's the right fit is for you on that page. And so I just want to leave you with this. I want to thank NAFA for having me. I love NAFA. We're great partners with each other. And I want to thank you for being here, and thank you for doing the work you are tirelessly doing to keep Americans emotionally and financially healthy. Thank you so much. Finally, I want to leave you with this. Becoming an emotionally engaging advisor is an opportunity to make a massive leap to the next level. Learning and using these skills have been a game changer for me and my clients, and they will be for you. I'm ready to support you. I will be your biggest guide and your biggest cheerleader. And I want you to remember, what's missing from your business is not more hustle or industry knowledge. What's missing is more heart, more, hey, I'm human too. What's missing is more you. I want to help you bring more you to your work every day. When you have more you will have more joy and more success, and you will help more clients protect their babies. Thank you, NAFA Nation.